The evening, voters are deciding on three statewide initiatives. The first, Amendment 78, which would require the state legislature to allocate spending of all funds. Proposition 119 asks if the recreational marijuana sales tax should be increased to fund more out-of-state learning opportunities for all Colorado children.
Now, the third ballot initiative is Proposition 120, which would reduce property tax rates in our state. Political specialist Shaun joins us now to talk more on this. Shaun, we're already expecting some challenges to Prop 120 already.
This one is complicated because state lawmakers did something that has never happened before. They passed a law that essentially undermines the ballot measure. Proposition 120 is meant to cut property taxes for everyone by 9%. For residential property, the rate would drop to 6.5%, for commercial to 26.4%. Some state lawmakers didn't like that and were worried you might like it and vote for it. So they rewrote the tax code in such a way that the ballot measure only applies to multifamily homes like apartment complexes and lodging properties like hotels and bed and breakfasts. Homeowners and commercial property owners would get a smaller temporary tax reduction for 2 years. The ballot language was already set, so it doesn't include the changes lawmakers made, but the Blue Book does, so it can be confusing.
So what happens if it passes?
They go to court.
Yeah.
Supporters have said they do plan to go to court. They will make sure that the ballot language is upheld, and legal precedent really is on their side. The courts have found that the most recently passed law is the one that applies. But this is statutory, so lawmakers could just change it again if they wanted to. But, you know, I really think there would be tremendous backlash if they did something like that. I mean, imagine if every time the party in power at the state capitol decided they didn't like a ballot measure, so they passed a law to undermine it, you know.
That can happen
Over and over again.
Well, it could happen, but hopefully not over and over again.
They can try. They can try.
Let's keep talking, too, about what else you're going to keep an eye on tonight.
You know, I think one of the things that I'm watching for is to see if Colorado is really as liberal as the recent elections would have you believe, you know, and some of the ballot measures and even the school board races will be telling here. Republicans have decided that since they can't make things happen at the state capitol, they're in the minority, they'll make things happen at the ballot box. In 2020, they were able to pass an income tax cut and measure that requires voter approval for certain new fees. This year, they have two more ballot measures. Proposition 120 lowers property taxes, and Amendment 78 requires legislative oversight for money that currently is outside the budget process, like gifts, grants, and donations in the governor's office, legal settlements in the AG's office, and federal emergency funds. Colorado is traditionally a fiscally conservative state. This election will help determine if that is still the case and if Republicans can still make an impact and remain relevant here. The fiscal conservative theory will also be tested at the local level. Nearly 40 cities are considering tax measures. While most are sales tax increases, Denver is considering a measure that would lower and cap the sales tax. According to the Colorado Municipal League, since voter approval was required for tax measures in 1993, 61% of those at the local level have passed.
You know, and Shaun, it seems interesting these days, instead of just saying, here's a situation, here's a problem, we're going to raise taxes to pay for it. Now it's we're going to borrow money to pay for it.
Look at the bond measures in Denver,
absolutely, in hopes that voters go, oh, well, then it's not my money. Maybe it gives them a better shot at passing.
Right, yeah, and Denver does have a ton. You know, they've got 5 different questions dealing with $450 million for a variety of things, and other cities too asking for that bonding.
Well, let's talk about the school board races that you mentioned a second ago. This could really tell us a lot.
It really could. You know, we've got several of the big districts that could flip from the union-backed majorities to the pro-charter school majorities, right? And there is a record amount of money and interest in school board races this year. According to the Colorado Sun, candidates in 20 school district races have raised nearly $2 million. More people are running than ever before, and many have no prior experience in education. Their parents angry about how their kids' schools have handled COVID. Politics has been seeping into these races for some time, this year even more so. Several districts have slates of conservative-leaning candidates, and Colorado Politics reported that in El Paso County, the Republican Party sent school board candidates a questionnaire about whether they supported an audit of the 2020 election.
Interesting, isn't it?
Really?
I know. We also want to talk about growth. We know it seems like there's growing pains just about everywhere across our state right now.
Yeah, in so many ways. And this election, will be an indicator of how Coloradans want to deal with that growth. Denver voters will decide whether to allow the development of the Park Hill Golf Course. Boulder voters will weigh in on the city's annexation of the CU South campus. And voters in both cities will consider whether to limit how many unrelated people can live in one house. 10 cities are considering other housing measures ranging from increased taxes on short-term rentals to more spending on affordable housing. So we have a lot of stuff to watch for in an off-year election, right?
Yeah, and one of the things talking about the school boards, Denver Director at Large Scott Esserman looks like he's got a very sizable lead in that one. Vernon Jones running second. Looks like that one could be decided already, but the other one's very tight, so we'll see how they go.
Right. I expect Denver to stay the course.
Right.
I think you could see a flip in Douglas County, though. There's a lot of really angry parents, as we've seen at those school board
A lot of cars driving
meetings.
around with candidates on their windows,
Yeah.
so for sure. All right, Shaun, thank you.